Okay. All right, fellas. Just saying, a long time since I faced a group of headhunters. It's a bit like, for me, walking into the lion's den. In fact, last time I recall facing off with you guys was, I think it was a Westwood Ho Tavern, a long time ago. And the band used to have a chicken net over it, right in front of it. Because regularly, when the headhunters got pissed off, they'd throw bottles at him. Well, this particular night, Red Squad got called out there. And the band were very pleased to see us. Because when we walked in, you guys started throwing bottles at us. And that's when I first came across Wayne Cedric Doyle. And of course, as a cop, that's how I knew him, as Wayne Cedric Doyle, a rising star. Because he told me he recognised me as a rising star in the police, but he didn't know me as Alan Ross Murant. He knew me as just another arsehole. What I'm here tonight about, it doesn't make us best friends. But I'm going to talk to you about the rule of law, fairness and justice, a rule for the rich, a rule for the poor. And this is not the first time I've discussed this and mentioned this, being on TV and written about it. So if it doesn't make us best friends, though, it does make us on the same side on this issue. So let's say we're allies or strange bedfellows. I talk about the rule of law as it applies to, say, gangs. And to be politically correct, we say you are marginalised communities. I'm not allowed to say gangs, apparently, but you're gangs. And there's big gangs all over the place. You're shut out of society for a lot of reasons, and you're in the position you're in, ostracised, people are scared of you, fearful of you, they don't want to go anywhere near you. Now, Muldoon recognised this a long time ago, and he reached out to gangs. I don't presume to have the mana of Rod Muldoon, and I certainly don't share his economic vision about how he was running the economy when he was Prime Minister. But he had vision, and he recognised that if there isn't something done about this growing gang family we have, then sooner or later we're going to have a big problem in this country. What are we up to, about the third or fourth generation, where some of you might be here because you just prefer to be here. But a lot of these gang families are in the situation they are because the third or fourth generation, and as I say, they're shut out or they're locked out. Now, as I say, I don't have the mana of Muldoon, but I have the self-confidence in myself and the intelligence to say that there's a big problem for society, not for you guys. I was just down East Coast recently, and the one family there, they tell me there's 15,000. Now, they've got 15,000 guys running around with a bloody machete. But that's the whānau and all the people involved. And it's Taranaki, it's in the hut, it's here. I say to you this, there's a latent power that you guys have, and that is a political power. You might think, well, this is bloody strange, but I'll come back to that later. But as I say, I've got the confidence to talk to you as men who are aware of these issues I'm talking to you about. Some of you I would regard as shitheads, and I'm sure some of you will regard me as a shithead. And I look back in times where I think when I was in a detective squad, locked up a guy Davis from the Hells Angels for a rape, a guy Brown for bank robbery and gang rape. I would regard those things as real shithead conduct. But then there are also shitheads in the corporate world, and they haven't got any excuse for being where they are. And these are the guys who steal millions of dollars from their fellow citizens from various fraud rorts that they're involved in. Their companies become involved in taking contracts with governments or local governments. All sorts of bribes under the table are paid. So there's enormous amounts of money changing hands, and this is not lawful. Beating up wives, which apparently is endemic in mongrel mob, somebody tells me, is not confined to the mongrel mob or the Black Power. It is in lovely leafy Remuera. I recall as a detective locking up a guy, a QC, for assaulting his wife. I was ordered to release him because he was a QC. I'm talking to you about laws for the rich, laws for the poor. But before I go any further, some of you guys might know me, some of you won't. So I'll just tell you a little about me. I went to school with Winston Peters. He was a couple of years ahead of me. But Winston went on and he got himself a law degree, became a member of Parliament and calls himself the Right Honourable Foreign Minister. I got myself a policeman certificate, and then a couple of university degrees, became an MP, and now I call myself the honorary representative for a foreign country. But I'll talk to you about when I went into the police. And this is for a country boy from up north, and it's just like stepping into a forest. And I've written an article, Deep in the Forest. Could you get in there, and there are rules, there are unwritten rules, written rules. But the unwritten rules are probably as important as the rules that you guys have when you join your clubs. There's an expectation. I'll give you a couple of examples. My first homicide was a crew homicide. So I go along there and the police find a whole lot of blood, no bodies, and some kid crying in the cot. So my job was, as a scene detective, and really first time thoroughly and methodically searched the place, searched a particular piece of dirt, didn't find anything. A couple of months later, the police find the bodies, and they find that they were shot with a .22 rifle. So they go back and they search the scene, the piece of dirt I searched, and guess what? They find a cartridge case here, the .22 cartridge case, and they say it came from Arthur Allen Thomas's gun. So we go fast forward to 1979, and there's a Royal Commission of Inquiry into this. By this time, other ballistics evidence had arrived, and it could demonstrate that the lead in the deceased people did not come from the cartridge case that the police say they found. I missed it, but the next guy found it. The Court of the Royal Commission of Inquiry goes further. It says that that cartridge case was planted, the evidence was fabricated, and that Bruce Hutton, the boss, and another detective planted it. Now, prima facie case, fellas, is when the police think they've got enough evidence to put you or me before the court where the matters can be reviewed by the court. And if a Royal Commission of Inquiry hearing all this evidence and identifying two persons as the perpetrators of having fabricated the evidence, if that's not a prima facie case, what the hell is? But ever since that has happened, the police have ignored, refused to put those guys before the courts, are both dead now, and successive governments have ignored it, put their heads in the sand. This is a massive travesty of justice. I'm talking to you about the rule of law, the rule of police. So the police weren't prosecuted for that. Now, about this time, there were several murders, and Walton was the head of the CIB. Now, what I'm going to tell you now is, I wrote about it in this article here, 8,000 words when good cops go bad. So it's not something that I'm just making up now. It is not something that hasn't been out there, and there was an opportunity for the guys I'm talking about who are now dead to comment when they were alive, and they did. But that's all they did. So this is nothing new. It's not kicking a guy when he's down. So Walton puts pressure on Hutton to get an arrest. He wanted to jump the queue from number 3 to number 1 to become the commissioner. And Hutton got an arrest. It was the fabricated evidence, the cartridge case. Walton says the same thing to the head of the Olive Walker murder. And that guy says, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. So he's transferred back to the uniform branch. At this time, 1979, I was a senior sergeant in the control room. Walton comes to me. And as I say, the evidence had changed, the situation had changed. It was no longer relevant that I didn't find the bullet because the new ballistics evidence said it didn't matter. So Walton asked me to change my evidence from what I'd said in 2 previous trials. Well, as you know, that's bloody go to jail. And I said I wouldn't. I'm talking about rules inside the tent. So the guy who ran the Olive Walker murder wouldn't come up with a suspect. He's back in the uniform branch. I was qualified for commission rank. I had a university degree. I wasn't commissioned until Walton retired. So the penalty for me for not playing by the rules was you atrophy out the side. There's another character in amongst this, so it's got John Hughes, and he was the detective sergeant in charge of this when I was a detective, and a profile person. He was head of suspects in the crew homicide. He wasn't mentioned by the Royal Commission of Inquiry, but his name comes up. Well, like when I wrote this stuff, you can imagine the commissioner at the time and the fellow in the police association went absolutely apeshit. They said, no, this is Moran's got it. Well, it might have happened a long time ago, but it doesn't still happen. It doesn't happen anymore, but it still does happen. And I'll go through a chronology to demonstrate how well it happens. So the next thing we have is Terry Namu locked up for a bank robbery. Now, Hughes was the OC of that case. A detective sits down and Namu says, I didn't do that. So the detective says, types it out. Hughes comes in. rips the statement out, throws it in the rubbish can, says, sit down there, typed that into the statement saying he did rob the bank. Namu, he signed this, he did, lock him up. A few months later, in court, the defence say, detective, how many statements did he take? Or just the one where he said he did it? Sure you didn't take any more? No. Well, the defence then produced the statement that had been thrown in the rubbish can because Namu picked it up and put it in his pocket. The judge of that court, he then said to Walton, there should be a perjury inquiry into this. But there wasn't. I'm talking about inside the tent, the rules for the boys. This is clear evidence. The bloody court says we need a perjury inquiry here. No, it doesn't happen. Same character. This is the culture that evolves over a certain number of people. It comes from Walton, it comes from Hutton, it comes from Hughes. The next one's Tamahiri. Now, one of the first guy that Tamahiri murdered, the first woman, was Mary Barcham. I happen to be OC Body. I mean, it astonishes me. As I go through this here, you'll see, how the hell was I in all these things, these shootouts and that, but that's how my life happened. My first homicide was this bizarre crew homicide. My first, I was OC Body for Mary Barcham. That's Tamahiri. Tamahiri is the guy who got locked up a bit later for the 2 Swedish tourists. Now, Hughes says in evidence, remember at this stage, they hadn't found the mail. Hughes said, Tamahiri told me he got this watch from the deceased. Fast forward a couple of months later when they find the deceased, the watch is still on the body. Now, is that perjury or is it not? But again, no inquiry into that sort of thing. So it's not just confined to a couple of cases. A few things happened in my life. I was an MP and we had a scampy affair and a whole lot of drama for me, and I went to Europe, lived over there for 3 or 4 years, 5 years. I come back though just in 2007, just in time for Tūhoe to happen. I wrote an article in called Deep in the Forest. In my view, that was just total bullshit by the police, inventing terrorists, weapons of mass destruction. They'd just be given this terrorist legislation and they wanted to prove how smart they were. So they're gung-ho, guns, terrifying little kids, all the things they did in Tūhoe. I wrote an article saying it was an outrageous delusion and the Crimes Act and the Police Act were quite adequate to deal with the crimes that had been committed. It interested me that there was no comment from any left-wing journalists. I mean, who looks after these liberal guys out here? They're all, well, we're looking after the underclass, all the rest of it. In fact, a couple of them even supported the police. It wasn't until the Solicitor General came out a month or so later and said, listen fellas, I've got a problem here. There's no evidence to support the charges of terrorism. And you have to get my permission to do that. So you can't charge them for that. But this Tūhoe thing, you see, there's more to this misleading the judges to get the warrants. Did they mislead the Prime Minister? Because the protocols between the police and Cabinet say that when a terrorist action is going to happen, the police have to notify the Prime Minister. So either Helen Clark had been told and knew, or Helen Clark wasn't told, which means the police broke some more rules. It goes a bit further though, it doesn't stop there. Next thing we know, we've got .com. Police jumping in his house, standing on the kids on .com, terrifying his wife and kid and all that sort of stuff. Interestingly enough, the guy running it was a cop on Red Squad, Bugs Burgess. He by this time has become a commander and he's in charge of maybe he got some bad habits in Red Squad. So he's in charge of this particular raid into .com. Now when the whole thing goes before the courts, the detective inspector there said to Winkleman, who was a justice, before I answer your questions, I need to check with the FBI. So again, I say, we're talking about the rule of New Zealand law, the rule of the FBI. What the hell's going down? At least Justice Winkleman said, pal, in my court, these are the rules and you talk to me first. But this is the arrogance of the police. And why do they get so arrogant? Why are they like this? Because there's no sanction on them. So, I mean, it didn't just stop there. Then we've got the Red Devils. What they, 2017 or something there? And I think that same situation when they were raided, but on June 2013, the case against the Red Devils gang in Nelson has been dropped because of serious criminal offending by police involving fake search warrants and arrest of an undercover officer. So the police, when I was castigated by the Commissioner and the Association for writing this deep in the forest, saying, well, it only happened then. This is 2013 when the Red Devils get pinged, and this is the outcome from the court. I'll move now to what I'm really on about, and that's people getting shot. But again, just who am I to stand here and say, well, what's my rant up there? He doesn't know what it's like being shot front line when there's somebody with a gun, they're going to shoot him. Well, again, life for me in the police was pretty bizarre. It just sort of happened like this for me. One day, there was a bank robbery, so I get a couple of cops and we drive out to Beagle Avenue in Mount Albert, a cordoned area where the bandit had apparently run away. Pull up, stop the car, I get out, and on that side of the street didn't see him, the bandit of the shotgun, and he lets it go. Well, it was only across the road. He missed. Unbelievable. I had a gun. I didn't shoot him. He was later charged with attempted murder on me. But I say to you, I'm going to comment now on police at the scene of a shooting and shooting people. I've been shot at with a shotgun just across the road. A couple of weeks later, a month later, near the end of my time in the police, duty inspector, I drive into Lawn Street. Guy runs out in front of me, just robbed the bank. And he's got a shorn-off shotgun and he dropped all his money. So we stopped to pick it up. Prudent. I stopped the car. I got out, I had a snub-nosed 38. And I thought, this is good for about 10 metres. He's about 15 metres away and he's got a shotgun which is good for about 20 metres. What's going through my mind? The rules. I can shoot somebody if I fear death and can't otherwise prevent it, or I fear death of somebody else and I can't otherwise prevent it. So I'm doing all the sums here and I'm thinking about my kids and shit, you can't miss with that and this thing or whatever. Anyway, I said, put it down, pal, put it down. He put it down. He went to jail, I went home to my kids. You might think about what happened in Canada just recently. Somebody drives into a crowd, wipes out, kills about 12 people, takes out about another 20. But you see that cop on the video? One cop, one gun, and he puts it up to the bandit who's got a gun, and he didn't shoot him. He said, put it down, pal, he put it down. So what I'm saying before I now get on to examining what the police in the country are doing, I've been there and I've done it. The Canadian guy did it the other day. You don't have to shoot people just because you've got a gun. Let's look at that Puhoi thing a couple of days ago. We read, guy with a machete chases these guys, these two cops. Then we read, boom, 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 boom. They're both 6 shots each. All the bullets are gone. You can imagine, cops have been chasing them all over town. The adrenaline's pumping, whippy. The guy gets out of the car. They fire the bullets. They hit him 4 times. Once in the back. To me, that suggests that this wasn't somebody with a machete charging the cops. Probably somebody, and by all accounts, mentally disturbed, walking or running away with a bloody blunt pocket knife, and they shot him in the back. Now, why are these things happening? Because this thing called the Police Complaints Authority comes along. It is what examines these things we're talking about. I was on the initial Police Complaints Authority. It was formed to ensure that the evidence that the police, all the evidence that the police had, was put before the courts, because the police went through a bad period of just putting some stuff, not the whole lot of stuff. It was never designed to be a court, but progressively it has taken over, and it does the inquiry to decide whether or not a cop or somebody's actions are culpable and need to go before the courts. So, we probably will never know really what did happen up there in Puhoi, because this is a closed boys' club where the Police Complaints Authority are going to make the decision as to whether or not those cops are culpable for shooting that guy. Let's jump back further to Bellingham in Christchurch. He's out there bashing the snot out of cars with a hammer. A cop goes there and shoots him dead. Now I go back to, the rules are, if you fear death or grievous injury, then you can shoot somebody. Now this cop said I was scared he was going to kill me. This guy bashing, with a hammer bashing cars. I suggest all he had to do was back off. But whatever, whether I'm right or I'm wrong, the point is the actions of that cop should have been decided in an open court. I mean, that's why we have courts. We call this thing democracy here. And it's a wonderful thing. Parliament make the laws, government departments, they decide, you know, whether it's the tax department, the police department, the health department, they decide who, whether the laws apply, they apply the law. And then you have the courts. And the courts are there and they've evolved over many centuries to decide whether or not the law is properly applied. But at the moment, in all the cases I've referred to, no court has had the opportunity to evaluate the conduct of the police. Finally, I'll just talk about the Tongan boy out in, where was it? Was it Northwestern Motorway? This isn't a matter of the police getting excited and shooting somebody. They shot the wrong guy by mistake. He's just driving past and he gets whacked. So what happens there? Again, I'm quite sure the policewoman who did that did not mean to shoot him. But right at the moment, there's a deer hunter, and he's in court because he didn't mean to shoot his mate, but he's in court. That's what we all expect. And if we expect to go to court and there are going to be sanctions, then that modifies our conduct. But my concern is, and I've run this a few times, is over this period of time I've discussed, and there are many more examples, so many times the police, their conduct, in my view, should be reviewed before a court, but it is not. It is stopped at the point of the IPCA. So what do you do about it, guys? Well, you know, I mean, again, I say it's not just you guys. It's other gangs. It's all your whānau, all your group. And I would estimate there's probably 200,000 of your wider family, from Taranaki to Upper Hutt to here to down the South Island. That's a big group. I said to you before, you've got a latent power in politics. You know, I'm a politician, and again, I say I'm not an evangelist here trying to tell you how to do things. But if I look at the situation, you can say, oh yeah, but I voted Labour, I voted National because they said this, and they said all this other stuff. But have they ever really delivered any of the issues we're talking about? In fact, I can think of so many ministers of police, from John Banks to even my mate Richard Prebble to so many others who've come along. In my view, they just become a dog wagged by the tail. The police say, we want this, we want more of this, we want more of this, and that's what happens. It's not the right time now to go through an in-depth story about how you start a political party, but I do think that you guys need to think about these sort of things. I spoke to some guys in Rotorua recently, some people in Gisborne recently, and it astonishes me that at the top of the tree of each of these groups, there is awareness, there is understanding of the political power that you have. Now, not many of you guys would probably qualify to be MPs, because if you had more than 3-year penalties for more than 3 years, you can't do that. But that doesn't mean to say that as a wider group, you can't put together a board which selects MPs and that they're in control of your destiny of where you're going. So it's a long way, it's a long haul, fellas. And as I say, the fact that I'm here today doesn't make us best friends, but what I hope to do is extend what Muldoon said to you. To say, I don't presume to have the mana of Muldoon, but Muldoon did recognise there's a big group of you guys. And if we don't do something, this is the third or the fourth generation, in my view, we are breeding our own ISIS. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East and in Syria, and it just took whatever it took, and the ignition happens, and all of a sudden you've got the chaos over there. An underclass, for whatever reason they were denied, exploded. Okay. You might have probably thought I said you two all become politicians, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, have awareness of where is the power, what powers do you guys have, what have you been doing in the past, and where does the future lie?